We begin today's program with a visit from local activist Ed Smith. Ed is a member of the Coalition for a Better St. Catharines. The pressing issue right now for the organization continues to be the cleanup of the GM site on Ontario Street. Ed, it's been about an 18-month battle now, and it really just gets deeper and deeper, the problems with this site.
Yeah, it really does. And your timeline's right, Mike. It has been about 18 months since the coalition got involved. We started organizing about 2 years ago. We came together and then started making our concerns public almost exactly 18 months ago.
There are issues with the soil, and that's really what you're focusing on right now. Can you take me through the beginning of the timeline with the study on the soil quality?
Sure, I sure can. So when we started to be concerned, and when we first came public, we approached the City of St. Catharines and the Ministry of the Environment and also the media with our concerns. We didn't know the conditions of the soil at that exact moment, but we did have the legacy report. It's a highly contaminated, toxic site. The Ministry of the Environment ended up being interviewed on the issue by the St. Catharines Standard, and they made some quotes. And this was in January 2020. They told the St. Catharines Standard that, and this is quote, "They inspect the site regularly. They ensure any potential environmental issues are identified and addressed immediately to prevent any off-site impact." They continued then to say, "To be clear, recent inspections have not found any off-site impacts that would require the property owner to take action."
The property owner at that time, Bayshore Properties.
And so, reassuring words from the ministry. Our government ministry, reassuring words in the paper, didn't reassure us. So within a week, we were in the ministry offices. Two of us, myself and Dennis Adele, were in the ministry offices asking to review the site inspection reports. That is public documents, and you should be able to read them. They sat down with us and explained, well, there weren't any actual site inspection reports because they don't actually inspect. But if they ever get a complaint, they would go and check out what the complaint is about. And so we said, so when was the last time? Your newspaper quote leaves the impression that you're monitoring it all the time. They referred to a letter of guarantee that they got from General Motors in 2010. And this is the year 2020. And they say we have a letter of guarantee from General Motors that the site is more or less sealed and not leaking. That didn't give us any comfort. Then they also explained to us that the last time that they actually did go to do an inspection, which was a few years before 2020, they went with the Ministry of Labor because they had received a complaint, so they're bound to go and check out whatever the complaint was based on, and they didn't give us those details. And when the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of the Environment got to the site, now these are the professional government civil servants,
right.
They assessed from outside the fence that the site was too dangerous and refused to go on the site. And yet we have in St. Catharines children who play there, we have people who live on that site, and we have people with, I'll say, abuse issues with drugs and things like that, who use that site daily. And yet the trained inspectors from the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of the Environment refused to go on that site because they deemed it too dangerous.
Was your next step to look for a consultant who could do a study for the coalition?
That's exactly. So we engaged our own consultant who would not trespass to go on the property, and they made that clear. They said if you don't have landowners' permission, we won't go on. They did off-site assessments, which is not ideal, but it can give you an idea of what's going on the site. And their report left no doubts in our mind. You've got dying vegetation patterns along the flow lines of the drainage of the rainwater and things like that.
And this is going right into the 12-Mile Creek, is it not?
Right. And so in their minds, there was no doubt. They said that you've got highly toxic something on this site. Unless we can have access to the site, we can't make a statement on what it is.
But Bayshore wouldn't give them access.
No, we didn't even ask Bayshore because we just knew it was a non-starter. So the consultants wrote a report for us based on and they are qualified to make assessments based on vegetation also. That is part of their training, but it's not conclusive. And we understood that, but we wanted to have their report. So that report energized us that we were correct to continue along the lines we were going on. So we didn't let up on the ministry or the city. There are provincial policies in place that would let the city take action too. We have an incomplete demolition site. The city has the right to go in there and complete that demolition and bill the landowner. And we have a dangerous site for citizens. Again, the city has the right to go in there and remedy that situation and bill the landowner.
Since all of this, since you being vocal, your group being vocal, the ministry has sort of turned tail and now admitted that there's some PCBs on site.
That's
with
right.
An amendment to the original report.
That's right. They amended their original report just recently in April. And the PCBs are 908 times. The PCBs leaving the site in the one spot that they measured. There are other spots that we don't know what's going on. In the one spot that they measured, and to use their language, the discharge of PCBs is continuous and significant. It's 908 times provincial limit.
That's dangerous.
Almost 1,000 times what the provincial guidelines call for.
What's the next step for the coalition?
We're a bit frustrated at this case, if you want to call it, is moving forward at the pace of bureaucracy, and we're not satisfied with that. We think this is a human and environmental health issue. We think that there needs to be a sense of urgency. And we also have a concern because PCBs are one of the most dangerous chemicals out there. The ministry continues to say, if we go far enough downstream, it's diluted enough that we're not picking up significant. So it's leaving the site at 1,000 times the allowable limit. But if you get far enough away, there's so much water that it dilutes. And so the ministry uses that to justify they're not that concerned. However, that is misleading language in our view, because what PCBs do is they adhere to, they need more or less a vector to travel by. They don't adhere to water, they adhere to the solids so you could take a water sample and find very minute traces of PCBs because it's in the mud or it's in the tissue of the fish. And that's the big problem. We're going to start this week to erect our own signs warning people about the fish in the 12 Mile Creek. PCBs are one of the most carcinogenic substance out there. We think that if we had the right people in place, the ministry will say, well, they publish a fish guideline online, fish consumption guideline, which they do. How many of us know where that fish consumption guideline is? And more concerning is that so many people now fishing along 12 Mile Creek in Martindale and in Port Dalhousie area are newcomers to this area.
Right.
You know, they may not even speak the language, never mind know where to go to find the fish consumption guidelines. And so we need to draw attention to there are PCBs, or there is a very real possibility that there are PCBs in these fish.
And how can people find out a little bit more about the Coalition for a Better St. Catharines?
We have a Facebook site and we have a website. I would say go to our Facebook site. So just go to Facebook and search Coalition for a Better St. Catharines. We keep it updated constantly. We'll be putting our signs out. We'll be putting it on municipal lands. If the city of St. Catharines thinks it's inappropriate to warn citizens about eating fish that is possibly laced with PCBs, the city of St. Catharines can remove the signs, and if there's a penalty to pay, they know how to contact us. So we're not, this is not some dark, shady guerrilla tactics.